I wanted to obviously start by introducing two concepts that we'll be talking about today. So Raullen here on my left, obviously from IoTeX, you did the presentation just a few minutes ago, and we talked about a lot of interesting things that we will sort of like revisit now. And then we have Sandeep talking about AggLayer, and then we're gonna drop some interesting news for everybody in the audience. So Sandeep, maybe we start with you. I wanted to learn more about, or maybe also help the audience learn more about really what's the ultimate vision behind the AggLayer, and what prompted you guys to basically put your resources into making this happen, and how do you see it,
I think like Polygon is like now 7 years into its existence, right? And from day zero, the goal was that we want to build something which can basically help in taking Web3 to the scale of internet, right? And we did a lot of things in between. We did like this, Polygon POS chain, which is like, very, very famous chain, probably the top 3 chains in terms of the number of users and many other matrices. Then we, focused very heavily on the ZK rollups. We built the first ZK rollup 2023 March. And I think like doing all of this also, like there's still sitting in March or April 2023, we were like still that, okay, you will have ZK rollups, there will be hundreds of ZK rollups, but then can it, or does it mimic how the Web 2 internet works today, right? And we did not have that answer. And our research team came up with this, like one of my co-founders, Brendan, came up with this idea of this, ZK enabled, safety and interoperability layer, which is kind of like, which we call it aggregation layer, which aggregates multiple of these ZK rollups and chains, like independent chains, L1, L2, aggregates them all together where they can have safe interoperability and they can have unified liquidity. Like, we all know that with the layer 2s, like there's so many layer 2s now, hundreds and hundreds of them, and the scalability is here, block space is there, but then those block spaces are fairly fragmented. And the whole premise of blockchain is these two things, right? Like, when you have like this trustless compute, but then another important thing is you want to have composability, right? So you want to achieve scalability while not losing composability. And that was the quest. Like with ZK rollups and other kind of rollups, you can achieve scalability. You can have like thousands and thousands of these chains, but then you lose on the composability. Means one smart contract on one other chain interacts with some other smart contract on the other chain. And so that's where the concept of AggLayer came in, right? Like what you can think of AggLayer is, imagine AggLayer like Solana, right? But each user address is actually a chain. And now each chain can interact with any other chain if they are connected into the AggLayer, right? And the liquidity, and let's say you have a smart contract on chain A, and you are playing a game and you have USDT there, and you want to buy an NFT in a game which is on chain C, you in one single transaction, you can have like that USDT going into interacting with the smart contract on chain C, and buying that NFT and bringing that NFT back into your root chain. So, and then like other benefits are you can have different kinds of VMs, you can have different kind of decentralization profile. We'll talk about like the, today, like the IoTeX chain and things like that. So you can have these heterogeneous environments still connected together in one single fabric, single level of safety and interoperability. That is AggLayer. And now when you see that, imagine you have like, as I said, like the simplistic version of AggLayer is, think of it like a chain like Solana or Bitcoin or Ethereum, any single chain, but each address is a chain itself. And you can have millions and millions of chains over there so that your scalability is unlimited and your liquidity is unified. That is the vision of AggLayer. If we are able to do that, then this will look like something like the internet. And we are very, very clear that either we will chase this ultimate dream of creating this new internet, or if we die trying that, that's okay. Like going to zero is fine. That's okay. But if we click, it will be really, 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 really big, and that's the goal. That's the inspiration behind AggLayer.
I love it. Yeah, thank you for that. So talking about visions, Raullen, you talked a few minutes earlier, and we talked about, launching IoTeX 2.0 just a few weeks ago. I think Sandeep touched upon some super important concepts: interoperability, composability within the DePIN sector as well, and especially verifiability. Maybe can you give us like a freshen up of what you talked about earlier in regards to what Sandeep was saying as well?
Yeah, sure. So we are like a day one DePIN builders actually in the space, right? Since about the same time, like we both created the project.
Yeah, huge props to IoTeX. Like they've been doing DePIN when DePIN was a thing, right? Like they've been doing it.
Called IoT blockchain.
Yeah, this is called IoT.
Gosh.
DePIN was not, the word was not invented then.
We kind of go all the way back to 2016 or 17-ish. Yeah, so we see like a DePIN definitely as a growing sector in crypto, basically bringing like a crypto into the massive adoption, right? So that's the last vehicle, carry this kind of hope to make it happen. But we see like a DePIN has two problems right now, which I talk about during the keynote. So one is not easily buildable. That means like as a developer, you have to deal with a very complicated tech stack. That's maybe never, that means like you have to have like a huge team. They have a different skill set, right? So you're sitting down building for 1 year, 2 years, then you have a product to sell. That's kind of like a too long the process that doesn't give you like enough explorations into different ideas. So that's problem one. So to address this one, we actually introduced modularity in our 2.0 white paper. Basically, trying to bring in these modular infra pieces, trying to lower the barrier for builders and also help them to go to market faster. So theory two we have, or problem two we have right now is like the DePINs are very isolated, different sort of like networks. So they're not talking with each other, right? So it's like an analogy from what you guys are working on from the chain perspective. So we're working on the DePIN perspective for the interoperability between different networks. So our thesis is, we have to make every network verifiable so they can compose with each other. So they can even compose with DeFi protocols. They can compose with like AI protocols or systems as well. So that's another thing like we actually introduced just now. So we were going to launch IOID and WebStream as the two most important products, infra products. We help with developers to actually getting one step closer to making DePIN more usable.
So that makes me wonder, I have you guys here on stage. So what if maybe through the AggLayer, we could open up and integrate with the IoTeX layer 1? What would happen if we would sort of like give all this like DePIN specific infrastructure to any project or any chain that would be connected with the AggLayer? What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I would be very excited about that. Yeah, I mean, the whole purpose of AggLayer is that providing interoperability, and I think IoTeX has been working on that vision also. So if something like that can happen, it's up to Raullen. Something like that can happen, it will be really great.
Should we talk about it right now?
Shall we do it?
Really?
Should we do it?
All right.
Yeah, okay, let me try it, right? So after working with Sandeep and Polygon teams for like a couple months, so we have a small announcement to make right now. So we're so excited to work with Polygon AggLayer, trying to be like the hub of DePIN and bring all our expertise in the DePIN, like especially around this modular infra, to the AggLayer to facilitate like a more people and builders actually to issue their projects on the AggLayer. And of course, IoTeX layer 1 as well, right? So this is a huge announcement. This is basically like trying to move forward like the cutting edge of this like entire DePIN industry as well as the crypto industry.
Absolutely. And it also like why I think it's very huge is that, I think IoTeX has like 50 DePIN projects or something like that, some big number. And they are like kind of right now isolated from this whole Ethereum liquidity ecosystem, right? If the IoTeX chain L1 gets connected into AggLayer, it gets to connect with Ethereum in a trustless way, but it also gets to connect with all the layer 2s that are connected in the AggLayer. Wow. And in future, we expect to connect many L1s. We don't want to, kind of announce the names right now.
One at a time.
But you can think, you can think like multiple L1s, multiple L2s connected into this, and creating it like one single environment. And the philosophy, like, the business philosophy of AggLayer, like what we are, trying to do is that, AggLayer is more of a neutral, kind of framework from our side. And we want to work with the teams like IoTeX to kind of grow big on sector specific things, right? For example, in gaming, a lot of people know that we work very closely with Immutable X, right? IMX, which is the #1 gaming platform. Then we have Ronin, which recently announced they are also, big in gaming. And then, so at Polygon, instead of going after those individual sectors, we partner with some big teams who are specializing in that sector. And I think partnering with IoTeX is very good and huge for us also, because IoTeX can focus on DePIN related apps, bringing them those protocols on their infrastructure, and while contributing to the overall growth of the AggLayer. So it's like building AggLayer together, because AggLayer doesn't exist, like the tech doesn't mean much if it doesn't have too much to aggregate, right? So I see it as we building AggLayer together for us.
Yeah, and also making a huge impact on bringing DePIN to everybody, because I know Polygon has a huge user base. So we're basically a beneficial of those people by having them to either build or use DePIN. That's a really big deal.
That's a huge thing.
I don't know, maybe an applause,
Should we have a firm handshake?
I mean, honestly, I think this is one of the probably biggest DePIN groundbreaking things that have happened lately. I mean, one of the bigger problems, like you were saying, and like you were saying as well, interoperability. Fine, I can have a network, of devices pushing data, but then I still live in one ecosystem, and we see already that even having a multi-chain token is already a struggle, but it's something that everybody wants to do. But on top of that, bringing infrastructure to all these other chains, bringing the IoTeX infrastructure, the identity, the off-chain computing, and all these other software components is...
That's a very important point, and one of the purposes of AggLayer is that any chain which is connected into AggLayer, for example, Polygon POS is being connected into AggLayer. And Polygon POS is connected into Coinbase, Binance, all these exchanges, right? If one chain in the AggLayer is connected to exchanges, and let's say the on-ramp, fiat on-ramp and off-ramp, every other chain is connected, because you can use these features like bridge and call, right? So if you want to have a fiat on-ramp on your new chain, you can just call one function. Let's say on Polygon POS, it's on-ramps there and then moves the asset on your chain, right? So, and similarly, if you have an application which has a token and you want Binance listing for that token, and people want to send those tokens from your chain directly to Binance, even if IoTeX chain is not connected into Binance, let's say, you can use this bridge and call function, transfer it into an address, and that moves it onto POS chain and moves it to Binance from there. So these kind of features we are working, where these chains and spinning up these chains and growing the business models, business utility over there becomes much, much easier. And as you said that, this is very important, that to bring all of this infrastructure to these applications, like Polygon also has multiple DePIN projects like, Wi-Fi, Demo, some of these bigger ones. And we also had these projects, and I think that's where Raullen and me started talking, some of the projects which were both working with IoTeX and Polygon, if you want to name PowerPod is one of the project, and there are multiple other projects. And now with this thing happening, our collaboration goes to next level, right? Because whether that project is building on Polygon or on IoTeX, it's the same thing, and we can jointly grow all those projects. So I think this can lead to a huge, growth for DePIN, for IoTeX, and obviously for the AggLayer ecosystem that we build together.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Raullen, for example, if we try to jump in the future, maybe a couple of years, how do you see this collaboration panning out, and what is maybe, the thing that gets you most excited in the DePIN sector?
Yeah, I think what you said is very interestingly aligned with what I was talking about this morning, in the keynote, right? I think within the DePIN space, we need more composability. That means one DePIN can talk with another DePIN, exchange utility. Or they're talking with the DeFi protocols, maybe sitting on a different chain. Or they're maybe talking with the AI systems. So all sorts of composability within DePIN will also be somehow lie on this AggLayer as well. If you think about it, a DePIN A may be living on IoTeX layer 1, their token, right? So DePIN B, their token living on Polygon POS, or maybe other chains, and how they interact with each other, exchange values and utility, right? So it looks like AggLayer is a solution, to things like this. So that's why, like, by embracing like verifiability, that's a big thing we're going to work on. And what you guys are working on, I feel like we're opening like a future for the DePIN to grow into 10x and 100x.
Yep. And I was telling Raullen that, my expectation from Raullen is to become the biggest DePIN ecosystem. Like, surpass, I think Solana right now has a very big DePIN ecosystem. And my hope is that you guys surpass them in the coming 1 or 2 years.
All right, let's do that together,
Let's
man.
do that.
I think together is doable, yeah. And maybe, I don't know, maybe then after that we all become one DePIN ecosystem. And
That's the whole point of aggregation layer. We become one. After this, we become one ecosystem.
I mean, maybe with Solana too, eventually, who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Nice. Guys, thank you. I mean, let's see. I mean, we talked about basically, the crux of what we wanted to share, right? But if there is maybe something else that you guys feel it would be important for the audience to learn while we have you here, right? Like what gets you really excited? What like use case do you envision? Yeah, feel free to share.
I think for me, obviously, I'm going to say DePIN is a very important use case which can bring masses into the Web3 ecosystem. Payments, is definitely one of the things which is still uncracked. Like stable coins has become really, really big, and but we have nobody has gotten into micropayments as yet, in that scale. So that's another big use case for me. DeFi, obviously, I think we as Polygon, we want to focus a lot on the DeFi side, and obviously gaming remains to be a very big ecosystem. So, these are some of them. Crypto AI is also becoming big, but we have to see what kind of real use cases. Till now, most of the crypto AI is token projects with AI, just AI as a narrative
sprinkle
on this. I want to see some real, AI projects which actually use the power of this shared economies and trustless execution in some form. And let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, what you say really resonates with what I think as well. But one thing, for example, you mentioned gaming. There is a financial aspects related to AI, financial aspect related to all these other verticals. And DeFi on DePIN, for example, is something that should explode. We want to see it happen. Right. But for all that to happen, verifiability is the key. And maybe, Raullen, if you want to share, we've talked about it already, but in more specific, why is verifiability the key? Why is that not happening right now? And what do we need to do to make it happen?
Yeah, that's also a very interesting question, right? Because what DePIN is about is mostly an off-chain compute. If you think about the Uber, they maybe have 1 million cars, which each of a car emitting a data point every minute, right? Try to report what it's doing right now. So that's a huge volume of data. So those data are computed on top of the data cannot be happening on the chain, no matter how fast your chain is. So that's why we're going to launch WebStream. This is a world first off-chain verification network for DePIN specifically, actually in the coming November. So very soon. We have been working on this for the past 2 years. So it's all based on a POW and some ZK snarks. By having this one, so we want to make sure each DePIN project within the project, a device status, right? So the status of the entire network is verifiable. That's trustable by other entities or systems, so we can enable such as this DePIN project or network, so they can collateralize their product revenue to a DeFi protocol to borrow some USDT and further buy cars or devices to grow its kind of coverage, right? Trying to leverage basically. So this will give DePIN we hope a huge boost in terms of adoption and make it real.
Yeah, I mean, I always say the coolest thing about DePIN is also its weakest point. The coolest thing is that it connects the physical world, but it's also the weakest point because if you cannot verify the connection with the physical world, then you can't build the whole financial system on top of it. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. I mean, there are two parts of it. This is a longer debate, but one is that, you want to verify, which I think IoTeX was initially starting, that having these IoT devices and then having their data coming into the blockchain world, right? Whereas on the other hand is these, let's say you have a, DePIN mobile network or DePIN, internet network. You are in that scenario, you are not really looking to ingest a lot of data from these like individual nodes. Instead, you want to use this to incentivize, like it's outward, right? Like you want to incentivize, you want to have, like you want to charge the users for the usage of those devices and all that. So I think that problem becomes a little bit less pronounced because it's outward looking from there. Like you are not expecting a lot of data coming in from those nodes. Instead, you want like only the data which is like economically bound by some economic contracts, and you just want to settle them on chain. So there it becomes less pronounced, I would say. But yeah, like for that IoT devices, like purely where you want to have all that data and process that, and that for on-chain, like it's super, super hard. And I think the solution that you're talking about, like some solutions like that is required, where like you can take the data and verify it once. So of course, like in the first instance, somebody can meddle with the data, but once it's in the system and you have some ZK proofs for that, after that you cannot change the data, right? So
yeah, another interesting thing, like before getting on the stage, we were talking about is feeding the data, maybe something about yourself, your car, your weather station, into like an AI model. Actually, that is fully owned by you, right? So that's kind of AI perspective about this one. So you can train like a basically digital version of yourself, knows everything about you, where I am, what I'm doing, right? What I'm eating, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, right? What I'm thinking even eventually. So this is interesting, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that like right now, the smaller models that are more tailored towards one person or to one specific use case are becoming more popular and like useful than gigantic large model trained on the whole internet that knows a little bit about everything.
Yep.
So sweet. Guys, thank you. I think we're at time.
Yep.
I wanted to thank you for your time. Actually, it was pretty fun. If there is anything you'd like to add, feel free. Otherwise, I think we call it, and we just keep building this, and I can't wait to
this
get
was
working
really
on
good.
it.
Thank you so much for having me, IoTeX team.